Hello folks, I am in the process of straining my kefir, and I made this video to show you all exactly what I do since I've had several people who are really curious about it. So I'm going to show you several different kefir containers that are in different stages of fermentation, so you can kind of see what that looks like. And then I'm going to show you how I strain it, with the caveat being that this might be a slightly awkward video to film because I don't have an extra set of hands, so I might just have to sit down the phone and talk to you all for a minute if I need both hands. But that being said, here's what I have to start with. It's pretty simple. So, a spoon that does not have copper. It can be metal if it's stainless steel. It can be wooden, it can be plastic, whatever you want, just as long as it's not copper. A glass container that I want to store my kefir in. Funnel is optional depending on what you got. And I use a nylon strainer. You can use a stainless steel one. They do actually make a cup method where you can put the grains in something like this. I didn't have great success with it because I found that it was really difficult to clean, but you're certainly welcome to order one if you want to try that too. Now let me show you what I've got brewing over here. So I put these on about 24 hours ago. For reference, my home is pretty warm. It's about 81 degrees in here right now. So you can see I have two different batches. This batch here actually has fewer grains in it, which is why it has less milk. And you can see that even though it has fewer grains and was put on at the same time, it's actually a little less fermented than this one here. This is my original batch that has a lot of grains in it, and it has, even though it has more milk, it actually fermented faster. But I could pull up both of these, so let me show you how to look at fermentation. So you can look here, and you can actually see that there's this distillation on the top, and then there's also this whey separation at the bottom. This is about as sour as I personally like mine. It's not going to be too sour at this point. It should be pretty sweet, but also pretty flavorful and thick. You could go as light as this if you want to, or even lighter. But if you do go for the super whey separation, where you've got like that much whey at the bottom, just be aware that you might have something a little bit more tart if you like that. And then of course, if I were to pick up the lid, you can see I have grains floating in the top, and there's also probably some at the bottom too, which is ideal for them to be in two different locations. But I'm going to go ahead and strain this batch first. So this is actually quite a lot, which fortunately I do have a large receptacle here. So I'm just going to take my little nylon strainer here, and I'm going to try to hold it carefully. Pour that straight in. This is actually a flour vase that I repurposed. And then what I'm going to do, this may be hard to do with one hand, is I'm going to take my spoon, and I'm actually just going to work the kefir through the nylon strainer. And this is the stuff straight off the top, so it's actually like super, super thick. You can see I've got grains in here. And you can tell, I mean, you can see them pretty distinctly. Let me see if I can pull one out here. Come on, get up here. But yeah, that's a grain, obviously. That's not a milk curd. And so you can definitely tell the difference. Now, this is where I lied. I do actually need one more thing that I forgot about. This is super handy, something to put the grains in after you're finished straining. So just going to keep working these guys through. Don't worry if you like mash up the grains a little bit in the nylon. They're pretty durable. So this little chunk of straining probably takes more effort than any of the rest because most of the grains are on the top. Alright, and you can see I've actually got like some pretty thick curds in here too, right from the top of it. So you can't just dump the strainer out. I'm going to try to separate out my grains from the curds a little bit. I'm just pulling them out with my spoon. If you get some kefir in there, that's fine. It can just be fermented along with another batch, so that's totally cool. One thing you don't want to do, though, is you do not want to rinse these guys. Some people on the internet are like, oh yeah, it's totally fine if you rinse them. I mean, yeah, they'll live, but they actually produce a protective biofilm around themselves called kefirin, and if you strip that, then you are removing their ability to protect themselves, and that's bad. So let's be nice to our grains. So here we go. I've actually got a decent bit of curds in here, but that's fine. It can just ferment along with the second batch. It'll make it super tasty. And still working this through. So the next bit of pouring I do should actually go a lot faster than this. Okay, so I've got all the grains out, so you see how I'm kind of like mashing it through. And if you start doing this and you're like, oh no, I mashed a grain into the nylon, don't worry about it, they'll be fine. They're pretty durable little critters. Actually, I think I may have just done that. So, yep. So one of the other things you can do is you're like, is it a curd? Is it a grain? I can't tell. You can touch them. You can just pull them right out. And you're like, oh yeah, it's a grain that I've just been mashing straight into the nylon. It's fine. So he can go into the cup. So let's go ahead and let's pour some more. Alright, and I have poured too much. But that's okay. All things are fixable. So we're just going to, again, very carefully work our kefir through the strainer. Yeah, you can see this is straining like a lot faster. Like you can see, it's just pouring straight through. And we're just working it through. And one of the great things about this method that I really like above, like, say, using a cup, like the one I showed you earlier, is it actually allows you to kind of smooth out the consistency of it. Like you can see as I'm working, it's kind of smoothing out like any of the, oh, there's a grain. It smooths out any of the curds or anything like that. It mixes the whey in a little bit more versus like the cup kind of leaves it a little chunky, which, you know, hey, if you're into that, then go for it. But yeah, so it's a pretty simple process, and again, you'll find more grains like at the bottom, because usually they like to either float to the top or hang out at the bottom, one of the two. Yeah, now it's going really fast. So now that I've got all the grains off the top. There we go. Alright, now, I have had people ask me, like, does it go bad? How long can I keep it? Like a lot of fermented products, kefir doesn't really go bad per se, but it does continue to ferment. So that means it will become more carbonated and it will become more sour. So if you don't want those things, then I would recommend drinking it fairly quickly. My kefir doesn't survive that long, honestly, because I just love it so much. But most people say it starts turning sour in about 2 weeks. So that's totally up to you as to what your taste preferences are. You can see we've almost got this whole thing done. And it's taken me about 10 minutes, so that's not too long of a process. So we're getting down to the bottom now. You can see like the whey, like that's what's running through right there is the whey that's at the bottom. Once the whey is separated, it's not uncommon for it to start separating in your fridge. Like you'll put your kefir in your fridge, you'll be like, yay, I have this great fresh batch of kefir. And then you'll come back and there'll be whey floating in the top of it. That's fine. You can stir it back up with a spoon. You can give the jar a little shaky shake, whatever you'd like to do. It just mixes right back in. It's like if you have like natural peanut butter and you have to mix the oil back in. So no harm done. And I like to particularly mix in these thick bits because it does make your kefir a little thicker, a little creamier, which is great. It's another advantage of using whole milk as well. Oh, do I have a grain here? Let's see. Oh, yep, I do. Yeah. So some of them are pretty small. Like when they start breaking off and reproducing, they do get pretty tiny. Okay. So we are done with that. So that being said, I'll just go ahead and let that strain out. But I do want to show you guys these. So this is a pretty good chunk of grains. Some of it is distorted by the amount of kefir and milk that's in it, but you can see I have a good amount, and it fermented probably, I would say 3.5 cup, maybe 4 cups of milk in like 24 hours. So this is probably 2 tablespoons worth of grains, maybe 2.5. and they're fully active. They haven't been refrigerated or anything. So you can actually produce a lot of kefir pretty quickly, especially if you have a hot environment. But you guys get the idea. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop the lid on this. I'm going to tuck it in the fridge, and that is more kefir that I have for myself. Later on, of course, I'll get to that other batch over there. I might let that sit until the morning. But that being said, I hope this video helps you, and happy kefir making.